It helps if you point. There we go. Helps if you point the mic at your face. Hey, guys, Carey Murdock, Sooner Scoop Podcast. We did not do a full team podcast this week. Instead, the boys kind of running around. Josh is getting ready to go to All-American game. Eddie and I getting ready to head to New Orleans today. So I did catch up with J.G. Tate, who is the publisher of our Auburn site on Rivals, auburnsports.com, to get his take on the Sugar Bowl, what's going to go on. We're going to talk to him down there a little bit. Eddie and I are going to try and give you some extra podcasts from New Orleans as well. Who knows? We may even drink one night and just do a podcast. I don't know what's going to happen. It could be really interesting. But did catch up with J.G. Tate from auburnsports.com. And first off, he started talking about Auburn fans' excitement about playing Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl. So here is the publisher of auburnsports.com and myself, Carey Murdock, with a little Sugar Bowl preview podcast for you.
In New Orleans, it's not too far away for the Auburn folks. I can get down there from my house in about 5.5 hours or something like that. So they're pretty stoked. Most folks are pretty stoked about Bourbon Street. It's a good scene, or at least I think it is. So it's a good trip, and I think people are excited about it. Oklahoma, I see them as a very good team. I think most Auburn people do too. In fact, I think most reasonable Auburn fans see this as a very difficult game, a game where they're going down there kind of hoping to win, would like to see a win, but they don't go down there thinking, we're going to get this one. Yummy. I think it's Oklahoma's tough, man.
So you're saying that there's not the SEC, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it so I don't offend any Auburn fans listening, but that I guess that stereotypical SEC fan is, we're better than everybody, and they're just ants under our boots.
I think that's a fair stereotype of Bammers, but Auburn people, I think, have been pretty realistic this year. Because I think Auburn came into the season with high expectations, got deflated very early, and then they got better as the season went on. And everybody's like, okay, I'll take a Sugar Bowl. After what it looked like early on, the Sugar Bowl is a major accomplishment. But I don't think most Auburn people go into the game thinking, we're going to win this one. Oklahoma's going to wipe them up. I just don't think that. I think Auburn people are realistic about this team and its limitations. I think they have some really good stuff at Auburn, but they've also got some big question marks. And I think this matchup focuses on some interesting stuff. I mean, Oklahoma, that RPO thing, that has been like kryptonite to this Auburn defense. Auburn can handle pretty much everything but RPO. And so Oklahoma
Which is odd because they can face that in practice all they want.
Well, I mean, Auburn, yeah, exactly. Oklahoma's as good as it gets, I think, as far as RPO goes. But when Auburn plays, say, Texas A&M, they had trouble there. They played Ole Miss, which I think, from my perspective, Oklahoma and Ole Miss look a lot alike. Offensively, Oklahoma has better personnel, but I think it's the same basic concept, man. Ole Miss wore them out. And if it hadn't been for a really bad offensive line, I think Ole Miss would have won that game, and Auburn has some good pass rushers. So I think Oklahoma's offense plays into Auburn's defense's weaknesses. So that's kind of interesting. And then Auburn on the other side, I mean, Sean White was out, and they absolutely shipwrecked with him out on the sideline. He hurt his shoulder in the Ole Miss game. So they were a mess late in the season. He's back, allegedly. So at that point, you think the offense is pretty good, and I'd like to see what it can do against Oklahoma's defense. So it's an intriguing game, and I think it's going to be a good trip for Auburn folks. I think a lot of people are going to be going and enjoying it.
Let me reset. J.G. Tate is our guest from auburnsports.com. I'll be honest, Jay, I scheduled this later in the evening, this podcast between us, because I spent the last few days with family. I've had a lot of, at my radio station, a lot of people are on vacation as soon as the season ends, or, they just go on Christmas holiday vacations. So I've been doing some extra work there. Really, the only reason I scheduled this so late in the evening was just to make sure I didn't day drink today.
Oh, okay. I had that same problem myself lately.
I need a little break. Papa needs a little time off. So now we're both, I think, heading tomorrow when this is out. We'll be heading to New Orleans.
That is correct. If you're going, I'm going for sure tomorrow.
I will see you there, along with Eddie Radosevich. I'm sure you've met Eddie before, haven't you? Our video guy.
I know Josh. I don't know if I've met Eddie though. So
you don't usually forget Eddie when you meet him.
Yeah,
he kind of has that personality.
From reading the board and stuff, he seems like kind of a fun guy. Looking forward to it, man.
I just hope that the bowl gift, I'm really hoping that the media bowl gift are one of those military grade flashlights that you can blind people with. I haven't gotten one of those yet.
I need some luggage, man. So that's what I'm pulling for.
I still use my Fiesta Bowl luggage that I have.
Like me too, right? My wheels fell off from the 2011 game. My wheels fell off like 2 weeks ago.
Man.
So this is perfect time for me to get a rolling bag. Just saying.
If you're listening, Sugar Bowl, which we know that you probably are because we're going to hashtag you all over this podcast.
Please, no more shirts. Please, no.
Yeah. I remember the national championship game in Miami when OU played Florida. They gave us the, fat guy Bahama shirt.
No, really?
Yeah, and it was terrible. And I thought, oh my God, it was like green. I was like, I'm never going to wear this. And I won't say the name of the person that did it, but at dinner that night, one of the media members came down wearing that immediately.
Oh, God.
And it was Tim Griffin from the San Antonio News Express. But I've never seen anybody wear that shirt since. I did get one when OU played LSU, one of the worst experiences I've ever been through. See, like Alabama or Auburn fans will look, I'll just tell you this, Jay. Auburn fans have a really long leash when it comes to fan behavior on Bourbon Street. Because any OU fan that went in 2004, when Nick Saban was the coach and they played LSU, it was a harrowing experience just walking down the street with those people. They were awful.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Is that your experience is covering Auburn when you are around LSU fans, that they're just awful people?
No, that's usually Alabama for me. But LSU people drink a lot. And my experience is, well, with the exception of one trip down there, my experience with the LSU people are good. I generally like them, again, compared to Alabama people.
Is it just in their nature to walk right up into your face and scream Tiger bait?
Yes. But that's kind of an SEC thing. Not necessarily Tiger bait, but just to kind of be that way. Auburn folks in general, I think they have a reputation for being a little more classy than that. I don't necessarily see a lot of that at Auburn, but there's other places we go. Here's the thing, man. In 2001, the hurricane that came through and just demolished. Oh, it might have been 05. The years get away from me. Anyway, the game Auburn at LSU was rescheduled because of a natural disaster. They have one down there like every 5 years. It sucks. So Auburn's game against LSU was moved to December, and it turned out that Auburn was really good and LSU was really good. So they played for a trip to Atlanta in Baton Rouge in December. Loser leaves town, winner goes to Atlanta. Dude, it was like Beirut. I was mooned by Santa Claus. The bus was rocked. Man, it was crazy. The Tiger Tail bus, which is like a big fan thing. It's like a VW bus. It's all painted up like Auburn. It plays Auburn songs. Dude, it was torched to the ground.
Holy crap.
It was lit on fire, dude. I mean, it really was like Beirut. I will never forget it. But since then, LSU's been pretty good to me.
Now, okay, back to this matchup. I will say this, Jay. I don't know how much of Oklahoma you've gotten to watch this year or how much of the Big 12 in general. But I really think that there is no comparing what Oklahoma is going to face with that front seven, front four, whatever you want to call it for Auburn, as opposed to what they've faced so far this year. And I'd even go so far as to say it would be up there with Ohio State in terms of just raw physical power and talent up front on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The only game I watched of Oklahoma's really from start to finish or close to it was the Texas Tech game. I saw a lot of that game, and I know.
Why would you watch that?
I mean, I don't know. It was just on, and like I said, I kind of like OU, and it was kind of weird to watch that because I don't watch a lot of Big 12 football, and it's a lot different, particularly defensively.
I would say that is one of the worst representations of football that even in the Big 12 where scoring is ridiculous. That game was, I would say, a career low light for me to cover personally. It was just embarrassing.
Texas Tech's defense, I don't know who's coaching those kids, but geez. Your defensive linemen can't just stand straight up and then try to push their way forward. That's not going to work, and it didn't work. That wouldn't work in the SEC at all.
I will say this, I remember watching Michigan and Ohio State and just thinking, good God, those are two teams that really are physical and play, especially in the secondary. Like, you just, in the SEC is kind of the same way, but the Big 12, you just forget, if all you watch is Big 12 football, you forget that there are safeties, except for maybe at West Virginia, who I think is pretty good at times, but you forget that there are safeties and defensive backs that will knock the ever-living shit out of you. And, you just don't ever see that in the Big 12.
Not as much, no. And Auburn has a few guys like that, not necessarily at safety, but it does get physical, that's for sure.
Now, injury front, I'll just kind of go over. Oklahoma has been relatively healthy. One of their big targets, Mark Andrews, I finally got him to admit kind of that he had a separated shoulder since that Texas Tech game. And he really hasn't. It's been, he ended up being all Big 12 first team. And you're kind of like, really? Did he deserve that with the season they had? Because his expectations for him were so high, but he hadn't been a big part of the offense. That'll be something I think that Auburn maybe hasn't seen in the last month and a half of the season that could be a factor in that game. Of course, you know about D.D. Westbrook. He had the concussion against Oklahoma State. He'll be back from that and is already back from that. But outside of that, Oklahoma comes into this game about as healthy as they've been all season. I know the only time I've heard from Gus Malzahn so far, and OU, we can get into this, but OU hasn't had a whole lot of media because of the Joe Mixon stuff. So there really hasn't been a whole lot of time to talk about Auburn. In fact, we haven't talked to the players since they started putting in their game plan for Auburn because they were going through finals last time we talked to them. Yeah. But like Gus Malzahn, the only time I heard him talk was in the Fiesta Bowl press conference, which I know you were on that. That was a disaster with Bob Stoops and the helicopter.
Yeah, the chopper thing killed me, man.
Yeah, we had a lot of get him to the chopper stuff on the radio the next day. But I mean, he was talking about, how banged up Auburn had been. It sounds like they're going to be kind of a different team in a lot of ways going in this bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, some of the really important guys that they had to have got knocked out late in the season, and it really messed them up. I mean, the quarterback, Shaun White, got a shoulder injury against Ole Miss, which I think was right around Halloween. And then he tried to play on it, and he just made it worse. And then they just had to bench him. And then they tried to put him in against Georgia, and it was a disaster. And they wouldn't take him out, and he just killed him because he couldn't play. Dude, the way they managed Shaun White late in the season just blows my mind. I don't know what they were thinking, but they don't have anybody behind him. That's the big criticism here at Auburn. That's what Auburn people can't understand is you've got this offense, right? I mean, everybody knows Gus Malzahn runs this offense.
Produced Cam Newton.
Yeah, Cam Newton. Nick Marshall was a great player, got them to the national championship game. And then all they've got is this Shaun White dude. And he can play, but he's not a runner. And he fell into their lap. Like, the only reason they have him is because he just kind of landed on him. Like, they didn't really go. They were going after other guys, and they ran across him. And they lose a lot of recruiting battles, and they just aren't where they need to be quarterback-wise. Well, they just got over that because they got Jarrett Stidham from Baylor. And
he's good, yeah.
Yeah, he's good, and they know him, and he's been running this kind of system his whole life, so it's going to be a nice fit. But they just got him. He's not going to be a factor in this game. So Shaun White's going to go into it presumably near 100%. I'm skeptical, but that's the word. And if he is 100%, that helps a lot. But he's not a runner. He's a good guy that can pitch and catch inside of 15 yards. And that's usually enough to kind of back defenses away from the running game because Cam Petway is a man. He's a very difficult guy to bring down.
Yeah.
And they just punish you, man. That offensive line can really hit. And that's the way they do things.
Now, in the secondary, you had Auburn had a lot of guys that were banged up, too. I think I heard Malzahn talking about that, maybe.
Yeah, just some nicked up guys. I mean, I don't think anything real serious. They have like a 10th-year senior who got banged up a little bit in the Iron Bowl. Joshua Holsey is going to be back. He didn't play as much in the Iron Bowl because he got knocked out a little bit, but he's fine now. And Carlton Davis, who was really good, he's a sophomore this year. He got nicked up a little bit in the Iron Bowl, but I think injury-wise, they're pretty good on defense. They lost a defensive lineman, but he was like a second/third teamer. Devereaux Lawrence had a knee injury in the Iron Bowl, so he's out for the game. And then Byron Cowart, who's a 5-star guy a couple years ago. I think he was the number 1 player, according to Rivals.com. Overall, he's back after appendicitis. He actually missed the Iron Bowl. So they lose one, gain one, if you look at it that way. Their first-team defensive line is really good, and they're healthy, and they're ready to go. It's the second team where it gets a little dicey, but those first-team guys will play a lot of snaps against OU, I would think.
Yeah, and J.G. Tate, our guest, joining us from AuburnSports.com, part of the Rivals Network. And Jay, I just think the biggest mismatch in this game is probably OU's defensive front against, the power game of Auburn. Because, like you said, offensively, they haven't been what they want to be this year. But, I mean, they can run the ball, though, can't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were leading the SEC in rushing for a while, and that's what they do, man. Gus Malzahn's number one thing is it's really a smash mouth spread with pace is what he likes to do. And if they're not running the ball, they're toast. So they'll dedicate 40 or 50 carries a game to the running game, and they really simplified things this year. They really only run about 4 plays now running, but they run it out of different formations and different directions and different motions and all that kind of stuff. But they love pulling guards. They love accentuating an A or a B gap and just pulling guys through it and just knocking you off the ball. And they have some really good guards. One guy's just really big and he's just kind of a Hulk. And the other guy's been playing a really long time. He was actually part of the 2013 National Championship, semifinalist or finalist team. He's been really good all these years. So, and they're experienced and they're big up there. They're just kind of so-so at tackle. I think their pass pro is not great. But when it comes to run blocking, man, they've got dudes. They're second-team guys. They can block too. They will just keep running at you. And again, Cam Petway, their ace tailback, he's probably 240 pounds. He was an H-back last year, kind of a blocker. Again, that's one of the things these Auburn people can't understand. They have no backups at quarterback who can help them. And then Cam Petway was a fullback last year. He's their best tailback now. I would argue he's probably the best tailback in the league. And he was a fullback to start the season, dude, in the Clemson game, the first game of the year for Auburn. He didn't even play. Just coach's decision, didn't need him.
You know what's amazing is we've seen this trend a little bit in the Big 12, but you have these spread, no-huddle offenses. And I brought this up to Bob Stoops, and he really, it was kind of one of those things. He really didn't want to put too much thought into it. But you look at Texas. I mean, they're running, Baylor's offense, Art Briles' whole offense, but they're still a spread-you-out team, single back a lot of times. And Deontay Foreman had a fantastic year, huge running back in that system. Oklahoma, Samaje Perine, huge running back, in a spread, sometimes empty set formation, but no huddle. And now you see Auburn having that. I just think you're going to see more teams in college start to kind of catch on to this big back spread offense type system that we've seen this year.
Yeah, if you've got the lineman, man. And it just depends on the league, I guess. In the SEC, you got to have guards to kind of help you at the point of attack because the defensive linemen are so good. I don't know what the paradigm is in the Big 12 as far as running the football because I just don't watch enough of it. But you're right. Perine's a guy that I noticed when they played Tennessee, I guess last year. Man, he's good. He could definitely play in this league. Everybody like to have him. So, and Mixon too. He's really good. So Auburn's got another guy like their 1A back is a guy named Kerryon Johnson. A little quicker, a little longer, maybe not as big. He's been pretty good, but he took a high ankle sprain middle of the season. And with Cam Petway getting banged up, there was only one tailback left. And so Kerryon's basically playing on a high ankle sprain. He needed 2 weeks off, and he just didn't have it because there was nobody else.
Let me ask you this, because the only thing we talked about it a lot kind of toward the beginning of the season, but John Franklin III.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were all Last Chance U fans. What has been his reception? I know he was kind of, like you said, they've struggled in the quarterback thing. I don't know if that became you'll take anybody when you got the kid, because I just found it fascinating to see that kid. I was like, what college is that kid going to wind up in where he was on camera calling his offensive coordinator a dumb F? Yeah,
right.
I mean, what kind of kid has he been? How much have you got a chance to get to know him or talk to him or anything like that?
Yeah, I like him. I like John. He is pretty much as he is on the show. I mean, if you've watched Last Chance U, I think it's a pretty good snapshot of who he is. He's very cocky, very sure of himself. But a lot of those kids from South Florida are like that. I don't look at it as a personality fault or anything like that.
Yeah, just go watch a one-on-one rivals camp from Miami. Those kids trying to kill it. I mean, I think they start every move with one guy punching another guy.
Yeah, it's rough down there. It can be. And the guys, Auburn gets a lot of kids from that in that area, and they're always hyper competitive. I mean, really into it. So John's like that. He just can't pass. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. They put him in the Iron Bowl, and he actually completed some deep balls. Couldn't believe it. But he's just not much of a passer, and I think sometimes he just gets – I mean, like he's playing – okay, A&M. They put him in against A&M for a shot in the arm. It's 4th and 7, last drive of the game, and he runs out of bounds 5 yards downfield. All right, it's 4th down.
Yeah.
He runs out of bounds, like willfully. You're just like, dude, no. This is not good enough.
Which, like you said, you could almost predict he would be that type of a player just from watching Last Chance U.
Here's the thing that just makes my head I just melt down. Okay, so they needed a quarterback. We talked about that earlier. They needed at least a second quarterback, if not the guy to actually win the job. They're looking at John Franklin, who is what he is, and Gerard Evans, who ended up going to Virginia Tech, and he was really good. I mean, if you guys had a chance to see him, he's a runner, he's a passer.
Yeah, he's really good, yeah. They had that 6'7" receiver over there.
Yeah, he's good. Well, he wants to go to Auburn, and it's between John Franklin and Gerard Evans, and they ended up going with Franklin. Like, when they made that decision before signing day, Gerard's like, whoa, what happened? I thought I was going to Auburn. So they made a decision to go to John Franklin III, and he ends up stinking. I mean, I think he's an okay change of pace back because he is really fast in a straight line, and I think he can help them in that way. They run some cool little, like, wildcat type stuff for him that has been effective. But, dude, as a full-time starter, I don't think he can do it. And I think that was a mistake. If they could have gotten Gerard Evans, and I really think they could have, they might have been an even better team this year.
How much is Bob Stoops' past and his history with kind of poking the SEC resonated with fans when they heard that this was a matchup?
Not much. I just wonder if people even remember. I remember because I was just getting on the beat in the SEC when Stoops was at Florida doing a great job. And the idea then was that he would end up at Iowa and just kind of stay there for a long time. And he's done exactly what I thought he would do at Iowa, at Oklahoma. I mean, he's gone there and been really good for a long, long time. I think a lot of people here have just forgotten that he was at Florida, even though he was so good there. One of the best assistants that I've ever seen in this league. So he certainly has my respect, and I think the smart older fans remember him and respect him. But I think
there's no real, and what I'm speaking of is, a few years ago when the SEC had won like 6 or 7 in a row, somebody asked him in the preseason, like, well, yeah, the top's really good, but look at the bottom half; they're just as bad as everybody. I mean, and that got and maybe that was just the Alabama fans that were freaking out about it or whatever, but because they freak out about everything. By the way, I have had Phyllis from Mulga on our radio show before. She's a delight.
She is. She's a fine representative of the state.
She's the only person on Twitter that I allow to stay in my timeline that just puts political craziness on Twitter. Like, usually that's reserved for Facebook. But Phyllis goes all in on Twitter with the crazy political stuff.
You got to let her go. You just got to let her go and be what she is. I don't feel like people are angry around here about Stoops. Aside from the Mixon thing, but that's a whole different thing, and I think everybody just has their own little soapbox thing they want to go on about that.
You think that's just kind of like talking heads, radio guys looking for a hot take around there, or you think fans generally dislike Joe Mixon?
I don't know if I can. I just don't know enough about it. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really polled enough people. I mean, I don't think anyone's in favor of that kind of violence, but.
Well, no, you shouldn't be. You're a horrible person if you are.
Well, some people on Twitter, you know how they go, but
depends on. If he's scoring touchdowns for you, you're more likely to, forgive. Basically, is what I've learned from this whole thing.
I think that's what we've learned. Yes,
and it's not exclusive to Oklahoma, because if it had happened at Auburn or happened at Alabama or Texas, I mean, the fans want their touchdown makers, and they will go to any lengths to keep them. We've seen this college before. Football.
The SEC is not allergic to this concept. Maybe not as far as the violence shown by Joe Mixon on tape, but I mean, Auburn. Look, Cam Newton was kicked out of Florida, and he was a reclamation project at Auburn. Let's put it that way. And then Nick Marshall, who got Auburn to the national championship game in 2013, he was kicked out of Georgia for, I guess you would call it a white collar crime. They were like doing stuff with their money or their allotment, their tuition allotment, or books or something like that. So. Auburn fans know a little something about second chances or whatever, just not necessarily involving domestic violence in this era.
And here's one thing, and I get the point. What people have been upset about is the kid at Mississippi State. They got a 1-game suspension. He was on tape punching a woman.
Yeah, I saw that one. It was bad,
and none of it's good. I'm not excusing Joe Mixon. I mean, what he did was terrible at the time. I said, if he's not on this team anymore, no one should have a problem with it. I feel like the kid has lived a blessed life because he did something horrible, and he's been able to remain a football player. Now, it's killing his NFL chances with a lot of teams, and he might have to come back to school just because he has no other option, or he might be, potentially such a low draft pick that it makes no sense for him to go into the NFL. But the kid, like, I got into a fight with another guy in the media after his press conference because I said the first question was embarrassing to ask Joe Mixon why he decided to stay at Oklahoma. That's like, I didn't come up with a good analogy for this, but that's so backwards. It's like he is here to apologize and thank his lucky stars that he is able to still be here. Not the first question should not be, hey, why'd you decide to stay after you ruined your own life?
Well, I watched this from afar on Twitter, and you kept saying he was lobbing him softballs. And, that word has stigma, I think. Softballs. Like you're just setting it up for him. Which maybe he was.
Well, the media member did call and threaten to kick my ass when he sees me in New Orleans, so we still have that to play out.
Can he do that?
He's an overweight bald guy, and I'm an overweight young guy with hair.
So
if there is a fight, it won't last long.
I'd like to see it. I mean, I have your back, obviously, if you need it. I don't think you
would. I have the backing of my rivals, brethren.
Absolutely. I can. Yeah, I'm big help myself. Certainly.
It really did make me feel like a bastard. The fact that this was right the eve of Christmas Eve that I'm doing this. I just can't help myself sometimes, Jay.
Knowing you, I don't think you're a stranger to this kind of controversy.
This is why I need the Bell helicopter flashlight so I can blind my opponents that come after me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're heading out tomorrow. Oklahoma, I know, landed today. I've been on that tarmac before at the Sugar Bowl. I don't need to be accosted by old men with musical instruments to know that I'm at the Sugar Bowl. That part I can live without. And I know Bob came in and he got a lot of, hey, how great is it to be at the Sugar Bowl, Bob? And so there's really nothing that happens in that airport press conference that I felt deserved, an extra $400 in hotel fees to pay.
Exactly how I saw it as well. And Gus isn't going to say anything, even if it was a great situation. But on the tarmac, or actually for them, it's in the hotel, he's just going to say, we're just happy to be here. It's going to be a big game. Buckle up. That's all he's going to say.
You got a decent Gus Malzahn, don't you?
Yeah, I mean,
I think everybody that covers the beat has a D. Like, I've done a Bob for a long time. And it's just second nature. It's just like you spend that much time around someone and at their press conferences, it's just second nature to be able to do an impersonation.
I don't know enough about Bob to know what he sounds like anymore. It's been a long time.
Doing a podcast in a good way. Kind of like that thing. It's a real staccato, kind of pacey. Okay. That kind of thing. So, anything that you're really curious about Oklahoma that I can inform you on, that I can make you a more informed Sugar Bowl correspondent this week?
Well, I'm trying to think. There was one kid that ended up coming down to Auburn and Oklahoma and recruiting. He's a safety from Jenks. I want to say Parker.
Stephen Parker, yeah.
Parker? Is he any good?
He's very good. He got screwed, in my opinion. He was the only guy, like when their defense just sucked at the beginning of the year, they lost Zach Sanchez. He left school early. He was their best corner. And so they let this guy named Dakota Austin, and my God, you have no idea how many times I've referred to Dakota Austin as Dakota Johnson from 50 Shades of Grey this year on every podcast we've done. I've done it. Eddie's done it. I think we've gotten Josh to do it before too. But Dakota Austin started the season, and he filled in last year, did a really good job, had a couple of interceptions, and he was terrible. I mean, that Houston game, he got burned left and right. That cornerback position never really settled until they got this Jordan Parker kid, a true freshman from California that was healthy. He came in and boom, instantly it stabilized their defense. But before all that happened, the only guy at all that was making plays in the secondary was Stephen Parker. And he ended up being kind of their biggest stabilizing force. He moved down to nickel when Mike Stoops finally realized that their nickel wasn't any good. And he got honorable mention all Big 12, and I thought that was really, not that it's a real crime. I mean, it's not like Sean Lee getting left out of the Pro Bowl for the Cowboys, which is stupid. But he's, to me, their best, most consistent player on the defensive side of the ball.
So he was a kind of a failed corner who ended up making it big at nickel?
Yeah, and, I think we projected him as a safety. I mean, he was in Chicago at our 5-star and, did really well. And I was even surprised at how, he stood up with the other guys that were athletic at that and was good in coverage. I thought he could play corner in a pinch, but if you put him out there for an entire season, you'll kind of see him get exposed at that position.
Yep. Well, good. I liked him. He was very nice in recruiting.
He's a really good kid, too, yeah.
Yeah. They liked him a lot. It's been a while, though. God, he's a senior now, right?
Junior. Coming back for one more year, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Good stuff.
And he was that was when Mike Stoops first came back to Oklahoma. By the way, you should DVR this game just to be able to watch the press box shots of Mike Stoops. I'm sure you saw plenty of them in that Tech game.
Sure.
And my favorite thing about like a Mike Stoops press box shot is I had this one meme I did one time, and I just noticed that he had both Aquafina and Dasani sitting in front of him, water bottles. And he was like losing his mind and screaming. And so my meme title was Aquafina or Dasani? So you got to see Mike Stoops losing his shit, basically, to think that's funny, I guess.
I'd like to see it.
So anyway, boy, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for keeping me sober up to this point. It's not going to last, but
well, I got the same problem, my man. Ended up in Kentucky drinking a lot of bourbon these last few days, so I need to dry out a little bit ahead of this trip.
Went back to see the family. Is that where the dad resides now?
Yeah, that's where it is. That's where it all goes down for me and my family.
Well, good.
So when we're down in New Orleans, we'll definitely find a way to imbibe a little bit, and we'll find some fun things to do. There's
a liquor store right next to the hotel. Don't ask me how I know that, but I do know that.
Right around the corner.
Right.
And I actually this is a true story. Last time I was in New Orleans, I got free booze from, and the name's getting away from me, the big tall dude from Wedding Crashers. What's his name? Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn? Gave you free booze?
Absolutely, dude. I had a fifth up there fixing to pay for it, and he walked in. I was like, hey, what's up, man? I wasn't like a douche to him or anything. I was just like, what's up? And he's like, let me get that for you. I was like, sure.
Wow.
He's like, have a good time, man. He was out. He went to the House of Blues. I guess he was either, I don't know, doing whatever he does in the House of Blues.
Now, do you have any, since you're in SEC country, do you have good food recommendations for any OU fans listening?
No, I don't. Sorry, I've only been down there. I mean, it's like, again, 6 hours from my house. If we were in Atlanta, which is more like my home big town, I could be able to tell you that. But New Orleans, dude, I haven't been down there in about 10 years. So I'm just going to try to be foraging thoughtfully as best I can.
And will Malzahn's press conferences bore me to tears?
Yes.
Oh,
that's going to be big. I'm looking forward to an opportunity to play.
You know, it's really strange because, like, I know him from afar, and I knew about him when he was coaching over in, because if you're in Oklahoma, you had Jinx and Union, and they had the whole Springdale thing, and they had some crossover stuff, and they played each other for a little bit. But you knew who Gus Malzahn was just when he was in high school, and I always thought, like, man, this dude's, like, boring. He doesn't give anything when he does interviews, and then, because I know George Schroeder from USA Today works with us at the radio station, I know George pretty well. He lives in Norman now. But George just thinks the world of him and talks, it's like he just thinks he's the greatest guy. And I'm just like, man, I just don't, okay, I guess he has a personality somewhere buried in there.
He does. He's just, Schroeder makes me laugh anyway. But as far as Gus goes, he's just a nerd, dude. I mean, he's just a straight up bookworm nerd. Like, I don't think that he had a lot of social skills at any point in his life, and he's just kind of nerdy, and I think he would rather just draw up X's and O's all day, every day, and not talk to the media. Heck, maybe not talk to many players. He's that guy. He's not a bad guy. That's not indifferent or much different from how kind of Bob Stoops was early in his career, though. Like, he was never great with the media when he started. When he won early, it helped him because then he didn't have to be, he didn't have to have any type of bedside manner at all with the media because he won a national championship. He could do anything he wanted. He could tell anybody, anything he wanted to, and they'd have to believe it. You couldn't question him. But as he's gotten older, he really has gotten a lot more personable. And I think that goes with players too. Like, I remember hearing stories about players when they'd end up, in a one-on-one situation with Bob, how awkward it would be because he'd just ask him very general questions like, how's your family doing? Doing good? Okay. And now I think he's kind of softened as a human being a little bit. And he seems to enjoy dealing with people when I wouldn't say that was true 15 years ago. So maybe Gus will do the same thing. Yeah, assuming he makes it 15 years.
If he makes it, I don't know if anybody could make it 15 years at Auburn.
He was getting close to getting run earlier this year.
That's right. He was, wasn't he?
If he had lost that LSU game at home, I'm not saying he would have been fired on the spot, but I would have had my hot board ready.
I will tell you this, Jay. the head of security that does all he's the sweetest guy in the world. He and his wife have worked for, worked and put together the security around practice. Like, they have their practices, everything's closed off. They have security around the entire fence of the practice field, keeping people out or keep people stopping from peeking. But this guy is the biggest Auburn fan that I know. And I don't know it wouldn't shock me if they told him, okay, you can't be security for this bowl game. Because he has the Auburn logo on his Jeep that he drives around on the back tire cover. Like, he goes, I talk to him about it all the time. Like, he always goes to Auburn bowl games. And
so he lives in Norman or whatever?
Yeah, he lives in Norman. I remember when Auburn played K-State, he was jacked up that whole week because he was going to get to go within driving distance to see Auburn play.
Nice.
So you might pass that on to Gus. He has a secret agent.
If this was inversed and there was some hanger-on that was really into OU, I can guarantee you Gus would kick him out. No doubt about it.
Well, no, I think Bob is just paranoid enough to not. No, he is definitely paranoid. It wouldn't surprise me if Jim is his name, I believe. If Jim hasn't been working security at all once it was announced it was Auburn.
Probably a good idea.
Because Bob has a history at the Sugar Bowl. They felt like they were being spied on before that LSU game in 2004. And I believe they refused to work out at the Sugar Bowl in 2014 when they played Alabama because of the same thing.
Peering eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's Oklahoma working down there? Do you know?
Well, I know they're not at the Saints facility, which is where they were last time, which is good. I guess Auburn will be out there.
No, I think Auburn's at Tulane, right?
I thought it was OU at 2. I'll have to double check.
Maybe they flip-flop.
Yeah. So
you're saying the Saints thing is way out there? Is it like out in the boonies?
It's a bit of a drive, yeah. It's not fun to go out there every day.
Great. Looking forward to that.
But it does have a nice cafeteria they let you sit in, while you do that.
And pretend like you can get some food where you can't.
No, it's torture, so I guess. Jay, I look forward to seeing you in New Orleans, hanging out a little bit when we get a chance to do such things.
Yeah, let's do a collaborative show maybe at some point.
Yeah, I'll be sleeping with Eddie in my hotel room. We have different beds, thank God.
I'll bring alcohol. I'll find something. Bring something over.
There'll be a bar in my room by the time the week's over.
That's good to hear. I know I'll be over then.
All right, JG Tate, publisher of AuburnSports.com. Appreciate him joining us to give you a little bit of preview of the Sugar Bowl coming up. And all week, we're going to be bringing you some special podcasts. Maybe not this long, but after practices, things like that. We'll get you guys updated on everything that's going on out there in New Orleans. So, Jay, man, great talking to you. Thanks for coming on and talking to our boys and our girls about the matchup.
I appreciate it, guys. See ya.